Missions Pulse. Know God's heart, join His mission.
How did you get involved and find your niche in missions mobilization?
I was mobilized into missions. I mean, there was a guy named Keith Green, who you mentioned earlier, and I was a big fan of his music. And he became friends with a guy named Lauren Cunningham, founder of Youth with a Mission, or YWAM. And I guess they encouraged him to do a missions trip, and he went to Europe, of all places, and just somehow he really caught the fact that there's billions of people with no access to the gospel. And that just gripped him to the point where his whole last message was, Jesus commands us to go. And I think they had done a concert with that focus, and then he passed away suddenly in an airplane accident. And Melody Green, his wife, and Lauren Cunningham and a guy named Dave Gustafson, they rallied together and pulled off over 70 city memorial concert tour, which became like a missions mobilization movement, basically. And I was there at Hershey Park, Pennsylvania for one of those concerts, and just caught a glimpse of Revelation 7:9 and what a privilege it would be to have a small part to play in one of those people groups being there at the end of the story. And I think before that, even I was reading, I just started reading through your book, The Mind of a Missionary, and I love that first chapter on Jim Elliot. That story, and reading Elizabeth Elliot's Is It Under the Shadow of the Almighty, yes, I think was the book, that rocked me. And so that combination brought me into the mission stream. But I also had this strange dream, where a literal dream, where this bearded old prophet, scraggly guy was shouting at me, blow that trumpet, boy, blow that trumpet. And I woke up, and all I remembered was that image and Isaiah 58. And I read it, and it talks about blowing a trumpet. And I was like, okay. And I held on to that for like 15 years.
Wow.
Went to a Kairos course and then stayed for the facilitator training. And they brought up that scripture as a mobilization verse of the prophetic role of missions mobilizers. And I was like, oh, that's me. That's
a trumpeter, me. Right?
Yeah. And so as I kept going, I was in Youth with a Mission, and our whole focus as the ministry I was helping lead was mobilizing, equipping, sending, and sustaining to the unreached. And so just had a lot of experience there. And then over the last 10 years, the shift God took us through was coming alongside of the new workers God's raising up from new nations, from majority world churches.
Yeah, that is an exciting story. I can't help but think of Keith Green's song. I think it's called "Asleep in the Light." Yes. I love the lyric. Jesus rose from the dead, and you can't even get out of bed. I remember my days at Teen Mania Ministries. This was 1996. We had Teen Mania had purchased Last Days Ministries with Keith Green's land there, and the grass was 10 feet tall. We were clearing it out, hadn't been in use for some time. And I often tell stories as I was, weed whacking and clearing out this area, to hear the voice of Keith Green, Jesus rose from the dead and you can't even get out of bed. That is an inspirational, passionate call, obviously, to include us in God's dream for the nations.
Yes, totally. I did my DTS right there on that property.
Did you?
Yes, sir.
What year was that?
Oh, 1991.
Okay, so I was a little bit behind you. I was 96. So, wow, walking in your footsteps.
Missions Pulse. Know God's heart, join His mission. This podcast is powered by Within Reach Global. Subscribe, watch, and listen on YouTube today. Visit missionspulse.com.